is the first video presentation on Stargate. Stargate has been like a little bit floating around in the ether. Maybe I could talk a little bit about like sort of where it came from.
Yeah. I think a little background would be good leading into what Stargate
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So I guess a little bit of where I wanted to start out with is, um, you know, I'd probably be like the first person to say that like naming your blockchain upgrade process is probably an anti-pattern. Like it's probably a bad idea. Um, it's a bad idea. It just basically puts, to first and foremost, it puts a target on your back. Like, it creates a name thing for people to like argue about, disagree about, be uncertain about, complain about, etc. Um, and I mostly am like the first person to like say that that naming a blockchain upgrade is a bad idea. But Stargate emerged out of the process. So sort of Stargate came on my radar when we started to go to get ready for Game of Zones. And we were like, we need a sort of version of the software where IBC works. And we were like, okay, so like what's available? There's sort of been an IBC branch of the Cosmos SDK. There's the main line of the Cosmos SDK. The reality is that we have multiple teams working for multiple organizations, all with their own goals, priorities, preferences, all kind of contributing to this code right now. And so, Stargate, Game of Zones was the first reason, like, we need a stable release. And so I started looking in with Jack about like, what is the process of knocking out a stable release going to look like? And man, it was not pretty. What I realized is that like a lot of the other things that we had all kind of talked about as breaking changes to the Cosmos SDK, to Tendermint, were all kind of woven together in what we could get out for Game of Zones. And I was like, okay, so for Game of Zones, this wasn't a showstopper. We just needed, but it sort of it dawned on me. I'm like, oh, in order to launch IBC on the hub, which has kind of been our mission, we have this unfortunate reality of that the community has to take all of these changes in one big way, and we have hundreds of independent entities that interact with the Cosmos Hub, and all of them are going to be in this somewhat challenging position of having to deal with just a lot of change and churn and interface breaking. And I've sort of I've been fighting the battle somewhat, it feels like, single-handedly we need to make Stargate, we need to make the next upgrade get as much as we want into it, but break as little as possible, and have like clean upgrade paths. And while I think that, I've fought and won that battle in many places, and we've had great collaboration on this, and the engineering teams are doing incredible work to make that happen. And the blood is in the GitHub issues that you can see, and like in never-ending discussions on like long discussions that almost nobody wants to keep track of, in the encoding channel of in the client libs channel of the Discord. We have an upgrade coming up that, in order to sort of fulfill everyone in the dev community's hopes and dreams for the Cosmos, we need to sort of we have this cost of a lot of change all at once. And so what Stargate is really about is, by giving it a name, we can kind of go to this larger community of people who are maybe, who interact with Cosmos, who are exchanges, who are wallets, but are not, as deeply involved in the Cosmos ecosystem, and give them something like concrete to point to and be like, you need to integration test against Stargate. And the fact that you gave it a name will probably like raise the visibility in their minds and make it easier for them to communicate with their teams. And so a big part of what we're asking for right now is we're asking for the community, the validators, the exchanges, the wallets, everybody to kind of get ready for this like sort of period of integration testing in August that will allow everyone in the network to now have confidence that we can launch the network running IBC with all these new features, and do so in a way that is not going to result in sort of random degradation to security or user experience along the way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I guess that kind of leads to the next question, like what exactly is changing
Okay.
with Stargate?
So Stargate is four things as sort of the principal changes. The change that is the most sort of in the weeds technical, but probably is going to make the biggest difference and represents the biggest amount of code churn, is we are switching from a homegrown serialization system called Amino to a well-established industry standard serialization system called Protobuf that originated inside of Google almost 20 years ago and has had, and is like a widely supported, battle-tested framework for doing so serialization. Like why? Like honestly, like I think I should probably like zoom out and like the serialization wars are like are a thing that most programmers will encounter in some of their criteria. And what serialization is basically is inside of your software, you have a bunch of data types. Those data types represent all of the like logic of your software. So you have a data type for staking and validation. You have data types for public keys. You have data types for blocks, etc. But in order to write your data types to disk, to send them out over a peer-to-peer network, to connect to them and like get them over RPC, we have to transform those data types into bits on the wire, bits on disk, bits on JSON that can be sent over JSON RPC. So that transformation so the transformation and the transformation back are critical. And as you can imagine, every piece of software in the world has to serialize and deserialize data. But on the whole, blockchains have this problem much worse. Blockchains have this problem much worse because when, unlike most other systems, there isn't one server that just sort of keeps all of the state in RAM. There's two things. One is every block, we have to write like all of our internal logic to disk and then write it back out of disk because a blockchain needs to be able to stop at any time, needs to be able to save its entire state, etc. So we serialize very frequently because we're constantly taking our internal data structures, sending them over the wire, writing them to disk, coming to consensus on them. We have this like enormous exposure to it. And I think if like it's almost literally the case that for every blockchain that exists, there is its own serialization system. And if you are trying to integrate and build software for a blockchain, you have to figure out how you're going to deal with it, whatever blockchain you're going to interact with, their own serialization. Ethereum has RLP. The Near protocol has a serialization called Borscht, and Cosmos had a serialization system called Amino. But dealing with Amino was probably the biggest single pain point for two reasons. One is, as we imagine, serialization and deserialization are pretty common. And Amino was built for ergonomics and correctness over efficiency. And this meant that when you're running a Cosmos Hub validator node or full node, literally 50% of your CPU time is spent in Amino. And basically, by switching to Protobuf and leveraging the fact that the Google and the Protobuf community have invested many millions of dollars and man hours in this, thousands of man hours, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of man hours in the serialization form that is used across this vast software ecosystem. It's fast. And so we're going to drop that percentage that's of CPU time spent on serialization and deserialization from 50% to something on the order of like 1% by going to Protobuf. And then we're also going to make it so easy to write software that securely gets, governance data, staking data, token values, all out of the Cosmos SDK, and it really makes the Cosmos SDK almost like a normal piece of like cloud software development, where you could use it to like power a Kubernetes engine, like Akash is doing, or use it as a mechanism to come to consensus on like software binaries, or like all of these use cases that are not just like the traditional blockchain stuff suddenly open up when you have Protobuf. So there's a big sales pitch, and there's a blog post coming out, kind of like with the sales pitch that a whole bunch of us have worked on. But this is why Protobuf. Okay, so Protobuf is that was one big spiel on Protobufs. The second spiel, new hotness of Stargate, or incoming change, is a feature that I've been excited about for a really long time, which is the typical model of syncing a blockchain full node is like you replay every transaction and every block from the beginning. And, Tendermint has had this, this ability to do that. And you have, but Tendermint makes blocks pretty quickly. We make a block like every 6 seconds on the hub, and that's nowhere near as fast as we could go. I'd probably estimate that we could easily be making a block every 2 seconds. But as you make more blocks, now replay becomes slower and slower. And well, so one of the things that like is back in 2015, we realized that you could take two pieces. So, okay, so then people have been working around this. People have been working around this by packaging up checkpoints of a node state and making it available for download over a website. And this is like a homebrew hack for the fact that block sync is slow. And the downside of this homebrew hack is that unless you grab one of these nodes and then go like check a bunch of block explorers or check another known source of truth that like your node is actually running on the Cosmos Hub mainnet, someone can easily just slip in a new blockchain to the download, and like it would be really easy to like sort of trick a node into like operating on a fork of the Cosmos Hub with like an evil validator set. So this is, this has been good enough for the last year, but like none of this is good enough for like mass adoption. So what StateSync is it combines the Tendermint light client with some new features in Tendermint that allow you to download the application state at a known block height from peers and check that application state against the Tendermint light client security. And what it does is it allows us to now bring blockchains, we bring Tendermint nodes to full sync in like 20 minutes. It's kind of like what we've been seeing when we've tested against like the size of the Cosmos Hub state. If you have a much bigger state, like let's say the Terra state, it might be like 2 hours. But this is like way better than waiting multiple days to bring full nodes online securely.
Which was how it was until at least so far, right?
Yeah, that's the experience that we delivered. So that's the sort of other one, and then there's two more sort of core functions of Stargate. The third one is building in support for automated upgrades. So we've sort of been doing these stop the world coordinated upgrades where we informally coordinate like how the upgrade is going to happen by a text proposal. Everybody kind of runs their own system for doing it. And the good thing is we've done this twice on the Cosmos Hub. It's worked. It's been great. I mean, it hasn't all been great. Like we had that aborted Cosmos Hub 3 upgrade, but we've survived. But it's clearly unsustainable in the long run. And so we want the regen team actually went out and built sort of a deeper level of orchestration and automation right into the Cosmos Hub. And one of the other things that we're getting with Stargate is now this ability to actually deploy that orchestration in the Cosmos Hub SDK. There's one optional implementation of an upgrade automator. One of the things that I'm hoping to get out before Stargate is hopefully more than one implementation of like sort of an update sidecar. But this ability now for governance to basically say, this is the block height or block time that we're going to halt, and for the state machine to actually coordinate the entire blockchain halting. This is the upgrade binary that we're going to run, and have all of that, essentially all of that metadata be available on chain and available to process to like to use all of that, verify that its upgrade process is what consensus expects. And we should now be able to get to the point where Cosmos upgrades can happen while validators are sleeping.
And another exciting part of this would probably be, I mean, it gives a lot more, it reduces kind of like the human redundancy, right? Because like you did mention that one time when the Cosmos Hub software upgrade failed, and there was that brief moment of time when people were like, it's like, should we just keep going even though the time period was over, or do we kind of fall back to the initial chain that we had? And with this, that kind of reduces kind of the human component a lot more, would you say? Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, basically, so there's two sides. So like, when you automate these processes and you roll out a consistent automated experience, it does become possible to like generally improve QA around the whole system. The flip side of it is that, you don't have humans who are necessarily online. So I think it's going to take us, even though we've had almost a year of testing on regen testnet, obviously putting this process into the Cosmos Hub is going to be a lot more eyes on it. We're going to run a simulated automated upgrade during the Stargate testnet process. And we'll go into the Stargate testnet process, I'm sure, in this conversation. But yeah, that's the upgrade module. And then the fourth thing, which I'm going to say the least about because so much has been covered about it, is IBC. But what I would say is that the Stargate process is really, if you weren't involved in Game of Zones, and you are going to now start seeing, are you going to, if you run a wallet or an exchange, are you going to allow people to hold assets? Are you going to support assets that come in over IBC? Are you going to, are you a block explorer? Are you going to support visualizing assets that have come in over IBC? All of these pieces, we're in a really important process of like figuring out.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up wallets, visualizers, and exchanges, because that's kind of the next question. Because I think for like the average user and service provider, they might not quite understand like what does Stargate necessarily mean for us. Like, what do we have to do? So could you kind of go over into like the high level overview of what changes are expected and how people can get ready for each like user category?
Yeah. And honestly, I've been working on this for about 3 days. So like still early days. Mm-hmm. And so we're also, one of the things that I've sort of put together is a time estimate, which is I estimate that July 27th is when we will have a Stargate testnet release candidate. The sort of next piece of this of okay, so what does this mean for everyone? So the first thing is, like, if you are signing, so I think, meta goal is significant API stability, but anytime you change code, and especially when you make a big change in code like this, you are going to be in a situation where you are going to be in a situation where you are going to be in a situation where undoubtedly stuff is going to change. So what, like, I am expecting, and I'm hoping that, like, sort of the process can tolerate, and we're going to see that, if you have if you're a wallet and you're signing transactions, you're going to be able to do, you may, like, are basically have to, like, have a version of the code now that, like, supports Stargate. If you are an exchange, same deal. There are, the REST interfaces on the Cosmos SDK there are still going to be sort of REST interfaces to the Cosmos SDK. There's a goal of packaging everything into one binary, so you don't have to run both Tendermint and the Cosmos SDK to get the REST interfaces, which I think will be cool. But it's likely, because the sort of underlying implementation of all of those types have changed, that there are going to be changes to, like, what fields are in a response, how those fields are encoded, all of this stuff. It's all going to try and be a lot more standardized and consistent, because, a lot of the implementation of this was kind of home brewed in the past, and we're kind of moving to this model now where it's sort of coming from standardized dependencies. But I like, the reality is like, so, like, your integrations basically are gonna need some love. So there's that. The next thing is really, like, once IBC is live, there's going to be something other than atoms on the Cosmos Hub. And, increasingly there's going to be more and more like complex behavior that's possible as, like, some of these other ideas start to roll out. But first and foremost, there's going to be assets that came in over IBC. So how are you going to deal with them? People have to start figuring this out. Other things that are going to be cool is, like, if you are a participant in the system, because of the Protobuf changes, you're going to be able to give light client proofs of any data that's in the hub if you'd like. So if you want to provide, like, trustless light client proofs of account balances and stuff like that to your users, you can do stuff like that. And that'll be, I think, really cool to have as a capability. I think that is as we understand it. I think a big part of the knowledge base that we're trying to gather during this sort of intervening sort of 6-week period before Stargate RC1 is, like, a clear understanding of, like, what actually changed and where we're actually broke, so we can actually have, like, a guide written out that's like, X broke, Y broke, Z broke.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, we're kind of working on, all these entities are trying to come up with better guides on how to kind of prepare for this change down the line. This kind of covers the high level of.
Yeah, a big part of the reality of it is probably the most sort of breaking changes, which is the changes to query responses and to sending transactions and signing transactions are right now kind of like where the sort of coalface is in the mine, and kind of until that stuff all kind of solidifies and is merged, it's hard to provide, like, really high quality guidance. And so one of the big things that I'm sort of trying to wrap my head around and get a better understanding of is, like, what does that cliff face look like?
And obviously, if people do have questions, if any of the viewers are, like, service providers, like, I think the best way to start asking questions would be on Discord, because that's where a lot of the developer
Yeah.
activities happening. You'd say.
Well, let me like again give you like I want to give people a clear timeline, which is if you start asking questions tomorrow, what does this mean for me as a service provider? The answer is we don't really know.
Yeah.
Come back. What we are anticipating doing is basically kind of going one-on-one with as many service providers as we can once the Stargate testnet is up, and like dedicating like days of time, like a day where it's like we are helping these 5 service providers with integrations on these days, and so we want you to come up on the testnet. We want you to like test all of your stuff. We will be around to like help you figure out like what broke and why and how to work around it. And what we're expecting to do is kind of do this in a very like orderly block of service providers, and pretty much go through the entire world of exchanges, wallets, block explorers, and be like, during this period of time, it's not going to be everybody asking us questions. I think if this is too big a change to kind of do the like ad hoc peer support, everybody in a chat channel kind of system that we've done for previous upgrades. And that's a big part of like why this has a name.
And we're hoping this like can be systemized, so like we understand it's a big change, trying to make people's lives easier, but at least immediately there's probably not much we could do, but once we have that, once we cross that deadline where we have a lot of things finalized, that's when people should kind of expect to see very good help in terms of integrating these changes.
I want to really plug, and you'll see a link in a bunch of places. On the Cosmos Devs GitHub, I have a project board that I'm sort of tracking everything in. And I'm going to try and keep that project board as up to date as kind of like, this is the real-time state and understanding of what are the pain points, what do we need to solve for.
Awesome. Yeah. Could you go into a little bit about where the progress of Stargate is kind of at this time?
So IBC is in I'll do it in reverse order, because we'll do the stuff that's like nearly done or done, and the stuff that's more emerging. The IBC is, as I think people appreciated during Game of Zones, is in like the 95% done state. We're like dotting I's and crossing T's on IBC readiness. I felt like the performance of IBC was pretty extraordinary during Game of Zones. The second thing that is the upgrade module. The upgrade module has probably been battle tested and used on the regen testnets a lot. I am trying to improve the story around the supervisor and sidecar process right now, but the on-chain components of it have been merged into the Cosmos SDK for 6 months at least. And we're in the 0.38 release of the Cosmos SDK. The sort of third process, the sort of third piece here is state sync. State sync is also done. It has been tested in sort of centralized settings. It has not yet been tested in a decentralized setting. Literally years of design work went into developing state sync, so I'm pretty confident in its ability to work. But we probably, that'll be a great feature for people to kind of try out. There's a strong preference in my mind to have, and then the final feature is the Protobuf stuff. All of the internal state, so like syncing of data structures to the blockchain for the Cosmos SDK was converted to Protobuf by Game of Zones. So we were actually running with that in Game of Zones. The changes in Tendermint to Protobuf and the changes in the changes to Tendermint to Protobuf are done and mostly merged, but should be a small portion of the surface area. The big part of the surface area is transaction signing and queries. And that is like midway through the process right now. There is an extensive design history and set of documentation about what changes we're making and how we're going to preserve compatibility and all of this stuff. But you know, I'm generally taking the opinion of we've done a lot of work on design. We got to wait for the sort of finished pack process to emerge. So kind of that's the order of operations right now. We are not putting in anything into Stargate. I think there's another like sort of question that will likely emerge on people's minds, which is we've seen some performance issues with the 0.38 release, especially related to the new pruning features, which were designed to be a major boost in throughput and seem to do that, but have uncovered some challenges with the IAVL tree, which is the Merkle tree that underlies the Cosmos SDK. What I am hoping is that we will probably be taking care of those, but after Stargate RC1, depending on Eric from the Interchain Berlin team who works on Tendermint is devoting some cycles to trying to figure out what to do about the IVL tree, and we are in the process of trying to get a sort of team together that can actively maintain the IAVL tree, which has been a bit of an orphan since the Cosmos launch, and yeah, my efforts to inside of All in Bits to find a home for it did not really work out, so we're trying again. But like sort of my vision for Stargate is RC1, the first testnet, will contain all interface breaking user experience changes, and then RC2 will just contain bug fixes and any performance improvements that are sort of in the works. And then hopefully we will then have a version that is stable that we can ask for approval from governance to create a Cosmos Hub 4 that runs this software.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and could you kind of go into the expected milestones moving forward? Obviously, a testnet would be one. Are there anything else that you have in mind? You mentioned July 27th as kind of the target date.
July 27th is with, probably an error band of like 5 or 6 days, what we think is a reasonable target for when we will start talking to the validators about running a decentralized Stargate testnet that is like a fork of the Cosmos Hub or a simulated upgrade of the Cosmos Hub. Very similar to the decentralized network that's testnet for Cosmos Hub 3 that bHarvest ran back in the day. Back for the Cosmos Hub 2, Cosmos Hub 3 upgrade. So we're gonna spin that up. Then what I think is the milestones are, once that is working, I believe and at that point we invite like anyone who wants to run a zone that is going to support IBC, connect, start sending, IBC transactions. Everybody's free to interact with the software, all of that stuff. At that point, what I'm expecting to do is really spend a lot of time, frankly, the milestones are going to be a lot less public. It's going to be a lot of chasing people down and being like, does stuff work against this software? And I don't know how long that's going to take. And in the process, like I said, the ask from to the engineering team is to really pivot towards code review, security review, performance improvements, all of that stuff. But kind of take a break from all of these breaking changes for a little while. And so that'll be going on. I suspect that there will be at least one more release candidate. There may be more, depending on what issues that we run into and what the engineering roadmap looks like. And like sort of ticking along in parallel, we'll be accumulating a sort of understanding of, and, we'll ask people if we can announce or, publish to a public dashboard, like, oh, look, like we worked with the Binance team and like they're ready. We worked with, Coinbase, Anchorage, etc. Like all the people who list atoms and like they're ready. And, once we have that package, that's the package I want to take to governance. The package of a piece of software that is been through a significant amount of testing, simulated upgrade has been run, all of this stuff, an understanding of here are all the people that we've integrated with, and they're ready to go. And finally, like a stable version of software that a lot of people have had exposure to and experience it. And I don't know how long this is going to take. It's going to be entirely unpredictable how long it's going to take. But when that is done and everything is polished, we'll be ready to make a governance proposal to create Cosmos Hub 4.
Do you kind of expect the governance process to be still similar to how we did software upgrades, where the hub votes on a specific version of the software and then
but like I said, I would like to set the hub's expectations that it will be not just a specific version of software. It will be this like process of the testnet, the process of the integrations with all of the people who interact with the Cosmos Hub. And what we're asking the hub to do is to like judge that whole thing, because it's not going to be enough to simply like it's not going to be enough to simply judge this on, are these changes that we want? I mean, I think everybody wants IBC. I think everybody wants state sync. Everybody wants faster and more standards compliant serialization. It's not just about like, do you want these features or do you believe in the implementation is secure? Really what this is going to come down to for the Cosmos Hub from a governance point of view is, do you believe the ecosystem is ready to absorb all of this change?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And
okay, so I mean,
what I view as like my job and the job of what I view as my job is to take all of this work that the teams have done and create a package that the Cosmos Hub can believe in.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's got to be a lot more discussions happening with these significant changes. I think I've kind of covered a lot of the kind of major questions people would have. Do you kind of want to acknowledge a lot of the different entities that put in the work? Because I think this is kind of like the first major release where the work was done across many, many different entities.
Yeah, I mean, like much of this work began at All in Bits. Much of this work has continued at Interchain Berlin. Bez has been doing work on this through Fission. We've had contributions from Akash. We've had the Regen team is really borne the brunt of this incredibly heavy serialization lift, like heavy, ambitious, like incredibly painful serialization lift, and like the quality of the design documents are just amazing. The Interchain Berlin team obviously has been the lead on Crisco's, Fede, Aditya, have really been the leverage on that. And then there's the sort of Tess and Eric and Callum have kind of picked up the torch on the consensus engine and Tendermint side and like delivered this feature that has been on the consensus engine roadmap for 5 years to completion. This is what my role here is, not to be like the CEO of all of these different organizations. Like everybody's working on their own stuff. What frankly I am here for is to deal with two things. One is this integration process and the complexity of doing that integration process. And the second piece is the the second piece is the second piece is what I was going to say is I'm here to like deal with that and then deal with the politics of it, basically. Because a blockchain is ultimately a political unit. A decentralized blockchain is a political unit. And wow, I think our engineering teams are all great. They neither like nor enjoy the pain involved in blockchain politics. And I've been willing to deal with it.
Yeah, and maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I mean, what's kind of the expectation post Stargate? Because I feel like this kind of completes that in like the initial vision of like Tendermint SDK, Tendermint Core, Cosmos SDK, and IBC. You know, I'm sure people are asking, it's like, what's next now, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Stargate, in my mind, represents the completion of the Cosmos white paper era, where there's been a lot of different distractions and everything, but ultimately it completes the vision of Tendermint in many ways that was started almost 6 years ago. It completes the vision of Cosmos in the sense that the actual system is IBC, decentralized network, all of these things. But a big part of the narrative here is that in completing, the Cosmos white paper created the conditions for the Cosmos Hub to exist. It did not give the Cosmos Hub a purpose. And I really am very interested in working on a purpose for the Cosmos Hub now that the white paper is finished and IBC exists. And ultimately, I think that purpose is going to be atoms providing a mechanism of assurance and security throughout the system. And I hope to talk more about that sort of in parallel to what's happening with Stargate.
Yeah, and it's like, it seems like now we kind of have everything that we need to do whatever the Cosmos Hub wants. And, obviously the focus would be, it's like, what do we want to do with the Cosmos Hub, right? Like now that we have all these components ready. So
yeah, and you see, I think we've been discussing this quite a lot in the price speculation chat. But yeah, I've been sort of, this is another sort of running thread in my work, which is, what does the Cosmos Hub do now that IBC exists and that there is an internet of blockchains? What should atoms? What role should atoms play in that internet?
And where does that value come from? Yeah.
Where does that value come from? Yeah. Why this token? How does the hub and the atom have comparative advantage compared to other chains in the Cosmos Hub? I think we are definitely entering an era of sort of fairly brutal competition between layer one chains. I think everybody was like, interoperability will bring peace and cooperation, but it also brings about it brings us to the world of embrace, extend, extinguish, to talk about the whole OG Microsoft. And so you want to be Microsoft and not one of their many fallen competitors in this world of software being interoperable. So therefore, tokens can move and they can move between software stacks, and either you are the person, you either will do the extinguishing or be extinguished. So
yeah, I'm sure we'll see a lot of inter-blockchain politics coming now that interoperability is ready. So that should be very interesting.
I think that's like the weird thing is, I think a lot of people have sort of started to chime in on this idea that interoperability is less of is less critical, or is critical, but it doesn't create inherently cooperation. It creates avenues for both cooperation and competition.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really interested to kind of see where does that like sovereign narrative of, you know, the Cosmos like application specific blockchains go in terms of where, like how it fits into these politics? Because I'm sure like sovereignty is something that is on the table that you give up for convenience when you're considering interoperability with different chains and things like that, right? So, yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that really answers a lot of the high level questions. Kind of looking forward to seeing a lot of these getting finished, and yeah, do expect more updates on that's gonna be coming out of different entities on specifically what changed, what work went in, and yeah, any last words, Zaki?
Well, what I would say is, I've had about a little under a week to kind of focus on this now that Game of Zones has ended. And so we've been starting to get a lot of stuff together. So I'm expecting there's going to be a lot more blog posts. There's going to be a lot more, but I wanted, okay, so first things, I want to reiterate the call, like what is the call to action right now? The call to action right now is mostly get ready for August. Is like understand that your attention is going to be required, and that the Cosmos Hub is going to succeed, to go through this transformation, is going to need the cooperation of a large part of virtually all of the Cosmos community to kind of get on board and contribute and help figure out and document and all of this stuff. The other calls to action are to just start tracking. And if the July 27th update, like target day, starts to shift, you'll expect updates from me, and we will be providing that. I think we are still working on sort of a central clearinghouse for all Stargate related knowledge. All of this stuff takes some work to get right.
Awesome. Kind of treat it like mainnet launch number 2. Give it that.
I mean, honestly, yeah, it is as complicated. It is as or more complicated than Hub mainnet launch.
Yeah.
Because in Hub mainnet launch, we were, there were some back channel limited conversations with various exchanges and service providers. We had like one block explorer that we considered like a priority and like that. Now we have like half a dozen block explorers, 50, 60 different exchanges, tons of different wallets. Yeah, it's going to be, frankly, kind of a nightmare. It's going to be more complicated than mainnet launch in many ways. And so we're doing it through this new organizational structure. And, in general, this new organizational structure has a lot of value in terms of like freedom and decentralization for everyone involved. But it has the downside of, a more complex organizational structure makes shipping complex software sort of exponentially harder. And so we have to navigate this process.
Yeah, and that's why we kind of need the eyes of the community on this process, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for your time. And yeah, looking forward to progress updates and a lot of content that'll be coming out.
Thank you, Josh.
Bye-bye.